Okay, so hello and welcome along to another episode here of the interviews that I'm doing with the BTPA, the Bowen Therapy Professional Association here in the UK. And I'm really, really grateful today to have Ron Phelan with me, who is one of the, in my mind, one of the heavy hitters in the Bowen world, one of the characters that's been around for a really long time and has done some amazing work in the development of his PASC, Practitioner Assessment Skills Courses, and also in hormone release the Bowen way as well. So Ron, hi, and thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, greetings from down under in the southern end of Australia. I'm actually just south of Geelong, so we're where the whole Bowen world sort of started from.
Yeah, which is a beautiful thing to have as well. You know, I find it really interesting that there's still such a core of you in that kind of area, and you know the energy that's come from that little place in the world really is quite remarkable. Now, before we kind of get into too much detail about some of the work that you've done, I'd really like, and especially for anybody that's maybe not come across your work before, anybody that hasn't spent any time with you, how did you get to where you are today? What got you involved in physical therapy?
Well, my original background was electronic engineering, and I spent about 20 years in the industry. And one day I just looked at my computer screen one day and thought, I can't do this anymore. And so at the time I was heavily committed with young family and all the usual things, mortgages and all that sort of stuff. So I couldn't just drop everything and go off and do a full-time course. So I looked around what was available, and I started with massage training, and then I did one certificate in that, and then I did another one, which was remedial, which is sports injuries, and a lot of assessment came with that. So I guess with an engineering background and also having done remedial, I had an inquiring mind that I asked questions. And when I did my first Bowen training in 1996, I was asking lots of questions and not getting too many answers back, just follow the work and do the work. And I'd had Bowen in 1987, I think it was, a long time ago. And I was certainly aware of Bowen, and being in the Geelong region, the local naturopath did Bowen. So I was building up my massage practice and then referring people to him. But when they rang and asked for Bowen, and then one day I thought, no, I better learn Bowen. So I went off and did some Bowen training in 96. I did actually ring Dr. Kevin Ryan, one of the original students, and asked him if he'd teach me, but he was... He sort of must have looked down the phone and thought, who's this guy? Because he was local in Geelong, and I'd heard that, he took people in, but that wasn't quite the case. And so I started using Bowen because I was probably, at the time when I was building up my massage practice, I was getting, maybe 1 in 5 or maybe 1 in 6 phone calls asking for Bowen. And so that's really how I got into Bowen. And the school where I did my massage training actually introduced Bowen into their curriculum the following year after I finished. So it was sort of like I just missed out, and I thought, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And so, but then I was really lucky because, I actually ended up becoming a patient of Kevin Ryan's for about 3 years. And then I met Dr. Romney Smeaton through a sequence of events. And then I think it was 2000, about 2000, he invited me to come to his clinic and observe him work. I used to go in every fortnight and spend the morning with him. And, he'd saw a lot of patients in the morning, and probably about between 25 and 30 patients he'd see in the morning. And so I got to see a lot of his approach, could compare it to Kevin's approach, what I'd learned, subsequent other Bowen trainings I'd taken. So I was very... I guess for me, I became quite eclectic in using the best of what I saw and what I experienced, and that's sort of once again the impetus. I guess I was always testing to find out what was going on, because as a remedial massage therapist and also from an engineering background, you want to know what's going on, why it's not working, how to find the problem, how to fix it. And that's what I did. So what happened was in 2007, I think it was, a friend of mine in Perth and I was teaching a former Bowen at that time, and using assessments in that course. And she asked me, said, would you teach a course on assessment for Bowen practitioners, which wasn't around at all at that time. Nobody was teaching it. So I put together the first PASC course in 2007, taught it in Perth 2008, and that grew from there. Originally, the 3-day course had the TMJ in it as part of the 3-day workshop. So the 3-day workshop covered, lower back, knees, hamstrings, pelvic, all the areas that we commonly cover. So it was assessments for each section, and the TMJ was part of that. But then, actually, earlier on in 2004, I met a wonderful man in the US, Dr. Brendan Stack, an orthodontist, and I visited him a couple of times, and he'd given me some material to look at. And then I was very, very fortunate that in 2008, he contacted me and asked me to attend an orthodontic workshop. Now, there's not too many body workers get invited to an orthodontic workshop. And because I knew him, he invited me along because he knew I had an interest in TMJ. And he himself had taken a Bowen workshop because he'd heard that there was a TMJ component to this, to the Bowen. So he wanted to learn about it. And that's how I met him, through another Bowen practitioner. And and then consequently, he invited me to this workshop in 2008. And I mean, to be honest, I sat there and I thought, what am I going to learn? Really, I was sitting with dentists, orthodontists. There was one guy there who was a paleontologist, and he wanted to compare dinosaur jaws to human jaws, but in America, you got to have a license to touch, and so he went off and did a dental degree just so he could touch human jaws and compare them. This is the sort of caliber of people that were on the workshop. And one little Bowen therapist from Geelong, was like, and I thought I'd best not say anything because I didn't want to. It was the old adage, best to keep your mouth shut and everybody think you're a fool rather than open your mouth and prove it. And because they were talking in a language I didn't understand, and luckily there was a guy next to me who was from London, and during the breaks I'd write down all these orthodontic terms and I'd ask him what it meant. And so we did this workshop in Washington, D.C., and I just learnt this amazing stuff. But I wasn't sure how I was going to use it because they were using MRIs and X-rays and all that sort of stuff to identify the jaw dysfunction, what they could do with it, et cetera, et cetera. And I came back to Australia in 2008 thinking, wow, amazing stuff. Well, how do I implement this with what I'm already doing? And Dr. Stack's work was just absolutely amazing. I had people coming in wheelchairs and getting up and walking out. And I actually got to work in his practice after that a number of times. And I ended up staying with him. I lived in his house with him. I treated him right up until pretty much he passed away. And a lovely, lovely man, great sense of humour. And so anyway, over a period of time, it took me about 2.5 years to figure out a way of getting the jaw position that Dr. Stack was doing using X-rays and MRIs, etc. And as often is the case, the answer was simple, but I made it too complicated at the start, and I was trying to fathom out all these sophisticated ways of identifying this jaw position. And the answer ended up being quite simple in the end, but it was a long road. And I got there in the end, and then one day this light, I went from a 25-watt globe to about a 3,000-watt globe, and this light came in on my clinic, and all of a sudden magic happened, and it's been happening ever since. So then I went back to Dr. Stack, I think it was about 2011 or something, and showed him what I'd found, and he was quite amazed. He couldn't believe that I could actually achieve what he was achieving. It had taken him 50 years, and it was so humbling working with him. He was such a beautiful man, and we had a lot of laughs in the clinic, and I just saw miracles being performed on a daily basis. And, subsequently, since I've been teaching that TMJ work, which was 2011, I ran my first class in England, actually, up at Sacriston. And I will say that on that course, I remember there was about 12 people on the course, and everybody was dressed in normal clothes, and there was one guy there in a suit and a tie, and we're all looking at this guy thinking, what's the story, because nobody turns up to a Bowen workshop dressed in a suit and a tie. And the person who organised the class said to him, "Oh, I know who you are. I know who you are." But said to this guy, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm a dentist." And I thought, "Oh my God, that's the last person I want on my very first TMJ course. This guy he's really going to rip into me and pull me apart." But he turned out to be, and still is, a great friend of mine. And he was humbled by the work. He was blown away by Dr. Stack, what he saw, and he started using the work I showed him in that course, and he's used it ever since in his practice. And we're catching up again this year, as we always do. We're working on a project together to do with appliances, and just one of the most amazing things, and I would say that the journey from going from electronic engineering into bodywork and then into Bowen has been amazing, and particularly the Bowen part, because I've just met some amazing people you just cannot believe. I can't believe I've met them. And I have to pinch myself sometimes to think, I really did that. I really met these people. And the beauty of it is that the work that I developed, particularly for the TMJ, I mean, the other assessment work, I've developed things as well just to make assessment easier, trying to figure out quick ways of assessing people so you know where to target the treatment. But particularly the TMJ, it's quite profound, and it can change the whole body just by doing the TMJ. And we've seen this many, many times. And it's not just me getting the results. I get people write to me say, I've had patients come in with all these amazing types of pathologies, and they're treated with a TMJ the way I was taught, the concept that I was taught by Dr. Stack. And the results are amazing. There's just incredible stories. And I'm very, I was very honored, like I said, to meet Dr. Stack and learn from him. And, and I've met some amazing people on the way, and he's certainly one of them.
I mean, that's quite a journey to say the least. And, there's so much to unpack just within those kind of opening statements there on. It's really exciting. And the whole nature of that engineering background, actually, it really speaks to me in an interesting way, because my father was an RAF engineer, and he and I were actually estranged between my age 2 and 30. And by that point, I was already practicing as a kinesiologist. And when he talked about how he tinkered with and resolved issues within mechanical engineering, the descriptions were so similar to how I would go about resolving things in the body that I found it really interesting that even after that separation of kind of 28 years between the two of us, there were still those commonalities in the way we thought and the way that we approached solving problems. And as you say, so often the answers are simple, but it can take a long time to accrue the knowledge and the experience and the sensitivity to be able to discard all the noise that we don't need and just focus on the more specific stuff. So I'm kind of curious as well, that having originally started in that massage space and then moved into Bowen, what for you was the kind of the fundamental difference between those techniques, and why did you end up favoring the Bowen direction over the massage side of things?
Well, there's a couple of good questions there, Ben, and thank you for asking. I think probably I started massaging in my late 30s. And I used to get a lot of the massage therapists coming to me for treatment, and they liked the real deep tissue work. And I was probably maybe 5 years into my career, and I thought to myself, I'm not going to make retirement age doing this. This wasn't such a good career choice. And a lot of people in the massage business there, they take about 5 to 8 years to get their business up and running and making what I could call a reasonable living out of it, and then their body gives out. So there was that part of it, and because I was aware of the Bowen, I like I said, I'm in the Geelong region. I had people asking me for Bowen, but I didn't do it, and then I realised I just had to learn the Bowen, and that was I guess the other part, and I think probably within 6 months of learning Bowen, I'd converted about a third of my patients over to Bowen. And the new patients that rang up, I just didn't give them a choice. They rang up and they said, oh, I'm after a massage. I say, well, this is what I do. This is the treatment. And then I'd sort of refer them on. Eventually, I referred them on to other people who did massage because I just didn't want to do the massage anymore. And I'm not devaluing massage because there are times when massage is really, really important and very relevant. And I think certain things like for certain types of conditions, I think massage will things will respond equally, if sometimes even not better than Bowen. But certainly from a holistic approach, getting the results up front, Bowen is second to none, and in most cases. But, there's always exceptions to the rule. And I think that's, one of the things I was told when I learned the first lot of Bowen was that, you're going to fix everybody and change the world. Well, I soon found out that wasn't the case. And when I went back and said, well, I had this patient that did this, and they say, oh, you must be doing it wrong. And I thought, no, I don't think so. There's something else going on here. So, and, if you look at the recordings of the interview with Tom Bowen back in 1973, I think it was the deposition for the Chiropractic and Osteopathic Board, he, by his own admission, was getting 88% success rate. And so he didn't fix everybody. And I've had people who came to him and said, look, I went to Tom Bowen 2 or 3 times and he didn't help me at all. So, he didn't fix everybody. But the thing was, he didn't keep you coming back. And that was, he might, and often he would know straight away, he'd just say, I can't help you. And so, I think it's handy to have more tools in the toolbox. And I think the assessment part came through, well, from an analytical side, from the engineering. And then when I did the remedial massage, I learned, lots of orthopedic tests, most of them which I don't really use anymore because I found that they were either too gross or in some cases they were just downright dangerous. And so I'd stopped using them. And I found when I came across applied kinesiology, I realized that was a much more accurate way and also less invasive way of testing the body and finding out what's going on. And I've developed my own approach to that. I had a course a couple of years ago. It was actually 2019 here in the UK, and a kinesiology teacher came along to the course and 2 other kinesiologists. And I've never studied applied kinesiology in a formal sense. I've learned it by experience. And I thought to myself, oh my God, this is going to be interesting. I've got a teacher and 2 other highly qualified kinesiologists in the group. And I just thought, well, I'll just do what I do. And they came up and thanked me. And that teacher came back and took my class again last year and has been using the approach that I use. So I guess it's sort of stood the test of time. And I think, I've got an inquiring mind, always have had. And, in the front of my manual, I say, I work on what I call a 90-10 rule. 90% of the time, you're going to do A, B, and C, and you're going to get D, E, and F, and that's how it works, and it's great. And then 10% of the time, it just doesn't work out that way. And I think as a practitioner, when you're starting out in any modality, you get frustrated with that because you think, well, it worked for the last person. Why is it working for this person? And then, I think somewhere along the line, I sort of decided to look at that 10%, not as a frustration, but as a window of opportunity to investigate other aspects. And sometimes the answer to those, that particular person may not come 2 years down the track and you go, oh my God, that could have helped that person now that I know this, but you didn't know it at the time. So I guess the important thing is not to beat yourself up. And, I don't think anybody out there is getting 100% success rate. It's just not possible because there are too many possibilities out there of dysfunction, and some things will never correct, And I'm still treating, like I treated somebody this week who used to go to Tom, and he, we talk about it and say, he said, I go to Tom, I go once or twice, I'll be okay. And I said, yeah, but you're 60 years older, 50 years older. It's not the same body, So
Yeah,
you
it
know,
does make quite a difference, doesn't it? The mileage under the wheels. It's it's
yeah.
amazing the difference in the way that structures are.
Here in this region, Ben, you know, I remember one guy came in. I had a practice in Geelong for many years, and I said to him, "Oh, you know, this is the treatment I use. I use the Bowen. Have you heard of the Bowen?" He said, "Oh, yeah, I used to go to Tommy, and he always fixed me in one go." And I think, oh dear, here we go, you know. But you learn to, you know, swallow that and just get on with what you do. And, you know, I had a successful practice there for many years. So people came back. So I guess I must have been doing something right. And you know, it's been an incredibly rewarding career.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit as well. Again, for some people who are listening in, they might not have come across AK before, applied kinesiology, which is an aspect of manual muscle testing, which has become a very diverse field as well. You know, I've been studying it for over 20 years now, and studied with lots of different teachers and lots of different ways of looking at muscle testing itself. And first came across it being used in Bowen with Paula Essen on some of her sport work, and using it as assessment in there as well. But tell me how you see the versatility of using manual muscle testing within the kind of the field of Bowen assessment.
Well, I started out using orthopedic assessment initially, and then I learned a style of Bowen that was based around it was put together using AK, and then I started looking into that more deeply. And you know, I've got the applied kinesiology book, you know, Walther with me, and you know, so it's sort of like the Bible really, and I've studied that. And I guess to answer your question, what I found with applied kinesiology, I could pick up more sensitivity of things going on than I could with orthopedic assessment, and it seemed to be, to me, to probably make it simple to understand, to me, orthopedic assessment is the black and white. Mm-hmm. Applied kinesiology is the color, right? You get all the colors and the hues and that you just don't get in orthopedic. And you get that through the sensitivity of muscle testing. Now, interestingly, it's funny that I live in a little town called Ocean Grove, which is about 28 in miles, is about 18 miles south of Geelong. And you wouldn't believe it, the local chiropractor here is the TMJ guy for chiropractic in Australia. And he teaches all around Australia on the TMJ for the chiropractors. And I caught up with him a couple of weeks ago and we're talking about those things. And I mentioned about AK. And he said, a lot of the chiropractors can't, including himself, just can't get the feel for the AK stuff because it's, you know, it's a technique within itself. And it was developed by George Goodhart, as you know. And of course, there's been lots of variations, you know, with Walther. There's John Thiel's work, Touch for Health, Alan Beardall's work, which is magical work, which I teach in the level 5, PASC 5 TMJ, and I've just put together a new module, PASC 6, which adds more to that of the applied kinesiology. And it does give you this ability to bring a lot more color to the picture. It's probably, without getting into, you know, talking about specific techniques of applied kinesiology, and I don't want to, you know, lose people, it's probably the best. And you go from a black and white, two-dimensional to a 3D color picture. That's what you get.
Yeah, and there's one of the things I really love about it as well, and the way that I've been taught, and especially over the last 10 years, I've spent a lot of time looking at epigenetics and functional biochemistry within AK techniques as well, and just that ability to link in that information and the depth of what you can find behind those muscle tests, I find absolutely fascinating. So tell me a little bit as well. I mean, we can hear there's been a lot of development within your practice as well, but is there anything that you know, I mean, obviously the change in the orthopedic techniques is something that you've refined or dropped as you've gone along, but is there anything that you have really resisted wanting to take into your work, but then when you have, it's made quite a significant difference?
Oh, no, I don't think there's anything I've resisted. I probably was just a lack of knowledge, not knowing about it. One of the things that I came across was implementing. This is how I came to finding the jaw position, was introducing an aspect of Ayurvedic medicine, which I wouldn't say I was resistant to, I just didn't know about it. And it's funny because I was shown an aspect of it and I misread it. And as a result of that, I came up with something else, which was actually more potent than what I was supposed to have been shown. So actually, that was quite amazing. And then I suppose the other aspect which has come into my work is the use of radionics, vibrational medicine. And I've just actually put together a kit that I'll be teaching in Hereford. And the kit is to identify a number of different things, such as things that we're resistant to, that the bodies cannot respond because it's in some sort of stress level, and it's identifying what that is, and that gives a bit of a window as to where you can go or what you can do about that. And it will actually, the radionics are actually remedies, so they're supportive, not inhibiting. There are lots of other things. There's supportive ones too for the jaw, and things like dehydration is a big one. You know, a lot of people come in the door and you don't even know if they're dehydrated. And if they're dehydrated, they won't respond very well to Bowen. So, you know, we go through some testing for that as well. And my approach is very eclectic. As I said, I use combinations of things I learned from obviously, most of the Bowens have a basis of Bowtech in them. So, and, you know, that's what I took originally. And then, you know, I watched Romney Smeaton, Kevin Ryan. There was another lovely man, Dr. Kevin Neve, who worked with Tom. And I've sort of put together my approach, a way of treating based on that, plus the trainings I'd taken in Bowen. And then in conjunction with that, is, you know, like I said, the muscle testing, which moved from more orthopedic into applied kinesiology, the introduction of the Ayurvedic aspect of it, and also the radionic component, which I found incredibly. In fact, I'm doing a workshop with a gentleman we've organised last year and this year down in Devon next month, and we had people on that course who 30 years plus, names you would know in the Bowen world, and they were all gobsmacked watching this guy work. He just blew us all away. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that. And he used radionics. In fact, he developed most of the radionics that I had used in the past with great success. And his work is another level again, which I wish I was 30 years younger.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a summary. And I suppose the other aspect of my work, so the PASC courses that I ran originally was a 3-day course, included the TMJ. Then after doing the training with Dr. Stack in 2008, spending 2.5 years developing my approach, and then finally putting together a course in 2011. That was a 1-day course. And then I worked down in Poole for a number of years, 6-7 years, with a dental group down there, and developed some work there. The second day came as a result of that and other work that I'd done. And then finally the third day, which I'm PASC Module 6, which I haven't taught before, and this will be the first time I've taught it in the world. It'll be in Hereford in June. So, but to do those, you have to come through the system, and the system is to do Module 1 first, which is a general assessment course, and then Module 4, which is the first day of TNJ. And I'm doing that way because I find that a lot of people, you know, if they're having issues, you know, problems, they see it on Bowen Therapy World Wide Web a lot. They put up questions, you know, I'm having this situation with a patient, what do I do next? And they're missing the basic fundamental assessment skills. And I've developed an approach to that, which is sort of has its base in AK with the stomatognathic system and the 3 triangles. And so there's assessments for the pelvics, triangle assessment for the thoracic triangle, and finally the cranial triangle. So the PASC 1 covers the general theory, the pelvic triangle and the thoracic triangle, and then PASC 4, you do the first day of TMJ, which is the cranial triangle. And then when they go away after those 2 days, they can assess. They can, they can quickly find out where the issues are and decide how am I going to approach this. And then they come back and repeat module 4, do module 5, come back and repeat 5, do module 6. That's how the process is. And the other thing I'd like to mention too, Ben, is that over Christmas, about 3 years ago, I think it was, my PASC 4 and 5, which is the 2 days I had been teaching there for years of TMJ, were recorded, video recorded, and it was sort of sitting on my hard drive waiting for me to get around to doing something about it. And so over Christmas, I sat down and edited it all and put together 44 videos, and they're available for free to the people who have taken the training. Now I think that's a good deal.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. So they once they've done the training, they get an access code. They get access to the website, and they can watch the videos. They can review the material that they've covered in those 2 days, majority of anyway. So I've done that because I guess, well, two things. I'm not getting any younger, and I think I'm not putting myself in any way, shape, or form in the same category as Tom Bowen, but Kevin Ryan bought an old VHS tape player to video Tom, and Tom was in and out of hospital in the latter part of his life, and he never got around to videoing it. Now, imagine if he had a video Tom practicing with people saying, "Oh, Tom did this, Tom did." Here's the evidence of it. Now, in my situation, like I said, I'm not putting myself in that Tom's shoes in any way, shape, or form, but I just wanted to make sure that that people get it right, and you go away. And so my courses, I don't take prisoners. It's a fairly heavy 2 days, the 4 and 5. That's why I've changed the structure of it, because I wanted to make it a bit more digestible, and secondly, give them the support now with the videos to review. And I've got other people starting to teach the module 1 and 4 in different countries. I've got this will be the last time I probably teach 1 and 4 in the UK, I think, because I've got a teacher coming on board to teach that from now on. So that'll support me and support the system. So yeah, that's what I've done with the PASC. I've tried to so at least 2 out of the 6 units are videoed, and so then there's no questions. You can watch the video and say that's how it was done.
I have to say, from a personal level, I'm absolutely gutted, because I've been watching your work for a little while now, and I'm absolutely gutted that I can't make it this year either. That I'm already booked in on those dates for other events, and
Right.
if this is the last time you're teaching in the UK, I might have to travel. But again, I find it really interesting that development within the work there, especially where you're talking about bringing in some of the radionics side of it. Within a lot of the kinesiology work that I'm doing, I'm using work developed by Chris Astell-Smith through Epigenetics International. So it's all AK and naturopathy based. And the amount of time we spend just looking at the biochemistry within the body, looking at allergy, toxicity, deficiency, infection as causes that then can add into why we're having structural problems because of how they're driving inflammation and so on. And Chris is quite adamant that we're better off treating the biochemistry first to help get the toxins and the other inhibitors out and get the nutrition in, and then the structural work is much easier to do and seems to hold a lot more permanently. So it's really nice hearing you talking about that as well.
Well, I would add to that of course the other third part of the triad of health, as you would know, is the emotional side. And of course, if that's not switched on and they don't want, for whatever reason, they're not how should I say, moving forward, though, they don't want to move forward. There are many reasons why people don't respond And so I used to teach a part of this program, and I've developed my own way, I guess, of doing it. And I've been using it in my practice now for many years. And so that's another module maybe down the track, is looking at the emotional side of it and dealing with that, because it's such an important aspect. And just muscle testing people to find out where they want to get better is, because sometimes, people say, yeah, I will do anything. I'll do the exercises, I'll do this, I'll walk, I'll drink. And you muscle test them, they don't want to get better. And they're gobsmacked because they don't realize that their conscious brain is telling them a story, but the subconscious is going, no, you don't want to get better. Let's just stay away. Let's just leave things the way they are, because we know who you are.
Yeah. And this is something that, especially for the last about 13, 14 years, I've been using an approach called integral, which was developed by an American philosopher, Ken Wilber. And we always see the person as 4 irreducible dimensions: their mind, beliefs, thoughts, their behavior, their physical body in terms of nutrition, movement, their culture and their relationships, and their physical environment. And we break those into the 2 subjective sides, the mind and the culture, and the 2 objective sides, the body and the environment. And we know that any of those dimensions can affect the others. And if there's a linchpin in one of those that you're not dealing with, you can do all you like on the other side of things, and it's not going to change things. So yeah, that fundamental reaction is so important, and understanding that we can't have a thought without there being a physical correlate to it. There's going to be a shift in the physiology, just like you can't stub your toe without creating a mind form around it as well.
Oh, for sure. There's been some wonderful work done on that with people like Lorimer Moseley and stuff like that, about the mind-body connections and stuff. And, he actually presented at a conference that was in, I think it was Warwickshire in 2010, and just blew everybody away with his, talking about that aspect of, how the mind sets up the body for failure, and if that's the case or whatever. So there's some really good stuff out there. And I think, as practitioners, even though we're structural workers, we're structural body workers, basically, as soon as a person comes in and starts talking about their condition, there's an emotional component already on the table. Yeah. And, and if you've got the skills, sure, use them. If you haven't got the skills, yes, you listen. That's all you can do, And I think the practitioners, there's plenty of practitioners just do physical work in and out the door, and that's okay. And if that's what you want, I've got to the stage now where I don't see I officially retired about 6 years ago, but I still see patients, but I do not. I'll only see people who are the interesting cases. I'm not interested in just seeing the general, lower back, neck and shoulders anymore. I've, been there, done that, got the T-shirt. So I look at the ones that are going to stretch my mind and make me consider other things, which brings me to another point, which is the hormonal work. And I know you're going to talk about that as well, so I'll jump the gun on that one. So a little bit of background with that. It was developed by a gentleman in South Australia called Trevor Rose from about a period of around about 1999 through to his passing in 2011. And it was being taught probably from about 2005 in Australia only. And I won't bore you with the whole story, but basically I did get asked to teach the work, and Trevor was actually coming over to ask me to teach it, and he never made it. He passed away. And then when I spoke to his wife, his widow now, and she confirmed he was coming over to ask me to teach the work. And there was a teacher here in Australia at the time, and I said, well, it makes more sense probably for me to open this up outside of Australia, which I have since done. And I taught the very first class of that. I think it was in Edinburgh, actually. And so now there's 26 people from 26 countries have taken the hormonal course, which I'm very proud of. That I haven't taught in 26 countries, but people have travelled from obscure places like Latvia and Greece and stuff like that to get to bigger courses such in Germany and Austria and stuff. So that work is based. I should say that the PASC courses, the ones we were talking about, are open to not only Bowen therapists, but to all massage, etc. Osteopaths, chiropractors, physios. I've had the whole lot come through over the years, dentists, of course. And the hormonal course is only available to the Bowen people because it builds on the training that you had in your prior Bowen training. It uses the terminology, it uses the moves, number of the moves. There are new moves, of course. So Trevor developed this in his little practice and was getting great results with people, things for hot flushes and mood swings and et cetera, et cetera. He had one lady come to him who had endometriosis when she was at that stage, going in. She was about 14 or 15 and she was getting endometriosis. And she'd been to Tom and she remembered Tom doing this particular move on her. And so Trevor kept doing it until he got it right. And then, so the endometriosis is something else that responds quite well to the work, along with a myriad of things. The guys get a little bit of work as well. So, there's some stuff for prostates and stuff like that. But primarily, I'd say 80% of it's for the women. And I think we go right through from birth, really through to menopause and the birthing process, the helping the lady get pregnant. So when I, once again, because of my background, did the course, and straight away I thought, well, I need to assess what's going on here. And at that stage, I didn't really have a lot to work with because testing the hormones and et cetera, I could test the structure, but the hormones. So I got a couple of kinesiology kits and started using them and started testing. And over time, I found that you could see the changes in the hormone patterns occurring, particularly for women who are having trouble getting pregnant. And, initially they'd been on other types of approaches, we'll say. Then their hormones are really usually all over the shop, and you test them and their body was just screaming out, saying help. So what I did was, when I did all this work with the hormones and going through testing estrogens and testosterones and etc., it was interesting that the last two hormones that showed up that were out of balance was always progesterone and pregnenolone. And as you're probably aware, pregnenolone's the precursor to progesterone, and pregnenolone's created by the mitochondria from your basically your fat tissue, adipose tissue. I've just gone blank for the moment, but basically your body from cholesterol, basically, and it breaks it down and converts it into ATP and all the rest of the stuff, and eventually you end up with pregnenolone and then progesterone. So, sorry, I'm going to reverse what I just said. Not cholesterol. It's I've just gone blank. I'll come up with the right word eventually. Sorry, it's one of the disadvantages of getting older. Your brain can't remember everything. So anyway, so basically, it was interesting watching the changes, and and eventually the women get pregnant because their body was now more balanced. So the initial course that I've been teaching was really no assessment in it at all whatsoever. And so me being me, I found that difficult not to teach something because, we say in that particular course, when you treat the person, treat them with your normal Bowen first, balance the body, and then implement the hormonal work because you'll get a better result. And of course, people go, well, how do I know when the body's balanced? And then we get back to the three triangles again. We're back to the assessment. So, and of course, people have different approaches of assessing, and other people have no understanding or no idea of assessment and just haven't been taught that. So, so basically, I show a little bit, but not much, because it's not part of the course, and there's only a certain amount of time to teach the course. So I'm in the process of developing a second level of that course, which which I'll probably release next year. And the gentleman I mentioned earlier doing the course with in Devon, last year he said to me, would you like me to make you up a hormonal test kit? And I went, that would be nice. So he did. He sent me over a kit of 49 vials for testing the hormones, and I've been using it. It's quite brilliant. And so, yeah, I'll be using, I guess, parts of that. I don't know whether I can teach the whole lot, because it's just, you know, it's like you open up a test kit and it just opens up a whole nother world. And,
Sure.
you know, how much can people take in, and also in 2 days? So, but the prerequisite for that course will be the Module 1 and Module 4 PASC, because they've got to know about the triangles. They need the TMJ work that I do is it's much more accurate. It's much more profound in the outcome, and it's more stable. It has a number of benefits that the standard TMJ just doesn't have. The standard TMJ is good. It's better than nothing. And a lot of people have used it over the years and got great results. But I think once you've used the approach that I learned from Dr. Stack and implemented, you wouldn't go back to it. It's like getting off a push bike and getting onto a motorcycle. Really, it's the difference. So, and because the functioning of the pituitary gland is our master endocrine driver there, and sitting in the cella turcica on the sphenoid, oscillating back and forth during respiration, driving all your hormones, the TMJ is sitting right next to it. And you have to have the TMJ balanced properly, otherwise it just throws everything out.
Yeah.
So
and for you, hormonal work, is that where you feel the mechanism of action is when we're applying Bowen in on hormonal work? And you've kind of referenced into the 3 triangles there, but what do you think it is that's actually creating that shift in hormonal function within the body?
Well, without getting too technical, if you look at the basic premise of the structure governs function, which is basis of a lot of hands-on modalities, particularly osteopathy, that if the functioning of the cranial rhythm there during our respiration, there's lots of things happening, breathing, movement of things, cranial bones, etc. And this little pituitary gland sitting this nice, cozy in this little spot behind the eyes there in the sphenoid bone, which is sitting back of behind the eyes at a slight angle, then any disturbance in that movement will cause a disturbance in the output of the pituitary gland, which then affects your thyroid gland, affects your growth hormones, affects right down the line. So a lot of people have sphenoid imbalances, and I'm sure as a AK therapist you've noticed. And the question is the sphenoid out because the TMJ is out? Is the TMJ out causing the sphenoid? But which way? It could be either way, but it could also be other things, and it could be distally as well. It could be coccyx, sacrum, pelvis, etc. So through the 3, or particularly through the first 2 courses of the TMJ, we go through all that and explain all that and talk about how to balance that. And so to answer your question, it gets down to a basic fundamental mechanical rhythm that's primal to our design. And if that's not working properly, then you're going to get irregular changes in outputs. And, I've had just great results just getting the TMJ balanced, which we do a little sphenoid balance in conjunction with that. And I've just written an article which will be in the BTPA journal on the atlas axis component, which is another aspect of the work I do with the TMJ, is that there are so many atlas axis issues out there. And I was talking to my friend in the UK a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying a lot of people, particularly women, when they go and get their hair done, their head's right back like this, and they're basically putting their atlas axis junction out of place, and then they end up with all sorts of problems. So I guess just to probably finish off on the sphenoid and why it's so important, other than the fact that it holds the pituitary gland, is that it's the only bone in the cranium that articulates with every other bone. No other bone does that. So therefore, if the atlas goes out, the occiput alters, as soon as the occiput alters, the sphenoid goes out. Has to, right? So it doesn't matter which bone is out. The jaw goes out, the sphenoid goes out, which it's mechanically sitting directly, the jaw sitting, the temporal bone sitting behind the sphenoid bone. So it's such an important aspect. And I think a lot of practitioners are doing work hoping for the best, but not really understanding the philosophy behind it and why they're doing and why it's so important. And I think that's, I know Graham Pennington runs the course, iOS, and in his first book that he's written, I'm not sure if he's finished the second one yet, but the first one, the original book that he brought out, there's a wonderful picture of a bow and an arrow and, a target, and he quotes and says, the odds of hitting the target goes up greatly if you're aiming at it. So once again, it gets back to the assessment. What are you trying to achieve here? What have you found? And how can I make what's out balanced to bring it back to what I'm trying to achieve?
Yeah, fabulous. And I'm kind of, one of the things I'm noticing, because I interviewed Graham, his interview will be coming out on the BTPA. By the time ours is released, his will have been out, and also Michael Nixon Livy as well, and talk to them about some of their approaches. And again, listening to you here, one of the things that I'm really hearing is that having an eclectic range of skills and understanding about the body, which is something that we can only develop over time. There's so much information, and we've got to build and build. So it's quite important that we have that range of skills and development over time. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with sticking in a particular lane, but I think the wider our knowledge base, the more we're able to work with greater variations in what shows up. But I'm curious, what do you wish that somebody had taught you in your early years that's now fundamental to your expression within bodywork? And what do you really wish everybody should be aware of, and you think that are real keys that they need within the practice?
Well, that's another big question, Ben. Look, I think everything happens at a certain time in your career for a reason. And I was saying before about that 90-10, and I can look back now and say, okay, if I had known that, yeah, at that time I could have helped that patient. But I think that's just part of the process. And I think, there's probably, to answer your question, everything's come at the time it needed to come. And yes, some things I was shown, and a lot of it I had to work out myself. And I think I don't mind doing it because that's my nature. And what I will say is that the people who come to courses and learn Bowen, particularly the ones who are starting out, they're getting the benefit of people like you just mentioned, Graham, Michael, Alistair, there's John Garfield, etc. And there's a host of others, and I don't mean to be disrespectful by leaving them out, but what they're doing is they've got this incredible opportunity to get from at the bottom, the first rung of the ladder, up to about halfway the ladder very quickly, whereas the rest of us had to sort of take it one step at a time. And I did have the advantage of having access to guys who work with Tom, which gave me, a lot more insight and from the variation. And just on the point about having other tools, I remember one of the guys, Kevin Neve, told me years ago, he said that he used to leave certain sacroiliac joint problems for Kevin when Kevin's day in the clinic. So he'd have, 3 or 4 that he wasn't getting resolution. And he said that, and so Tom would watch him doing what he was doing. He said, "Oh, Kevin, can you do the corrections?" And then he said, it might have been in the afternoon or something, he'd walk into the room where Tom was. He said, "I'm just doing this new thing I've just figured out," and he would just basically doing what Kevin had done. So, Tom was always for changing his work, and it was never, just Tom. Tom never would have called it the Bowen Technique. It was just what he did. It was, and so he was open and learning from other people. And all the people that he had working alongside him were qualified people, mostly chiros, osteo, etc. So he would bounce ideas off them as well, for sure. And like I said, in that particular instance, but there's one aspect that it's something I haven't figured out a way you can teach it. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a practitioner in a totally different field, and it's when you get to a certain point, you're working with somebody. The assessments that I just talked about, which are all great and will help you learn to find things, but then you get to a point where you just know. And that only comes with experience. And you got to be open and open mind, open heart, etc. Where you're working with a person, the assessments now, yes, that you can use them, but you just know. And I think that's a wonderful place when you get there. And I think it took me a long, long time. I was a slow learner. And I think one day I just went, I think I know what's going on, you know? And so I find that not only in my practice, but also in my personal life too. Somebody was telling me something. We went out for dinner last week. They said, I've got to tell you something. They told me, and I said, I already knew. I just knew. And they said, how'd you know? I just knew. I don't know how I knew, I just knew. And I think if I did a course a couple of years ago on development, and out of that came, without going into all the detail, the one word that came out of that I think is really paramount, and that's awareness. Because if you have awareness, then you can look at something and go, oh, I can go this way, or I can go that way, or whatever way you want to go. But there's a lot of people just going along doing things, but they're not really aware of what it is they're doing. And I think that part of that knowing and having that feeling of knowing comes by being open to the awareness of what's possible and what's happening. And I sort of, I don't want to get into the level of discussion I have with this other person, but it gets into quantum physics. So that's probably a whole other discussion. Well, not which I wouldn't say I'm an expert on, but it's all to do with that other realm.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I think that's quite important stuff as well. And it's one of the reasons why, for my own personal development and part of what I teach Qigong as well. And I find that as a way of actually developing that internal felt sense and that presence and awareness with the self, it's such a useful tool. And I agree that we're so lucky at this point in history that we've got characters such as yourself and, as you mentioned, John Garfield, Graham Pennington, Michael Nixon-Levy, and many others who were fortunate enough to do a lot of that early development. And it's easier for you guys to travel. It's easy for us to film you and connect to you. So we get to do that acceleration at a point that we hadn't been able to do through the 70s and 80s in those kind of early years of the people that were able to work with Tom directly, and those of you who were working with his early boys, as it were, and just our access to information from so many different fields and seeing all the different places where it correlates is really important. But I want to just come around to a final question with you as well. There's two questions, but this is the kind of the final main one I'd like to ask you is what do you think we should be exploring in body work that we're not giving enough attention to?
Well, I think if we're going to talk specifically about Bowen, I think from a point out, and I taught a former Bowen for 15 years before I sort of started doing what I'm doing now. And I see this in the classes, probably more so in the hormonal classes, but certainly across the board, depending on the background. And there's two things that are paramount, and I've spoken to other instructors about this, and they agree. The first thing is the assessment was lacking in Bowen from an early right from the start when it was taught. It was just do it and hope for the best. And I think a lot of people would feel more comfortable knowing that they've done something, that the person's going to be better, you know. And so there's that part. Another aspect which I find is lacking in most Bowen training is surface anatomy. And I find that, people are being taught, the 3 dimples from this and 2 dimples from that, and, and all this sort of stuff. And I think as a profession, we need to be more professional. We need to be able to talk the dialogue to other practitioners. So, but both the surface anatomy and the, to be able to locate, when I teach my classes, I teach in anatomical terminology and references and surface anatomy. I don't talk about dimples. That, to me, that's just not where we should be.
Sure.
And I also discuss things in the concepts of function, of philosophy, because I think if you have a technique, you really require an underpinning philosophy as to why it works. And I one thing I do say, and I'm not going to ask you to answer the question, but particularly in the hormonal class, the first move we do is the first move everybody learns in Bowen. Okay, and I always ask them, what does it do? And you'd be surprised the answers you get. I won't even go into this discussion in any depth, but I've had probably up to 7 or 8 different answers for the same thing. And I say, well, how do you know that? Oh, that's because that's what we're told.
Sure.
So where's the science behind that?
Yeah.
And there's none. So, I think that's, I actually say to people, if you're going to learn Bowen, it's important to understand what it is you're doing and why you're doing it and how it works. And I'm just saying there's one answer. I know, Graham talks very much about the meridian system and stuff, and that's great. I have a different approach, and it melds into lots of different things that I've learned over the years. But if you go to a medical clinic and you're doing a presentation on this wonderful technique, and you do that first move, and one of the medical people say, well, what are you doing by that? And you say, it's a stopper. And they say, what does it stop? And then there's a pause, right? And then somebody else might say it's a starter. And, to me, we have to move on from that. If we want to be recognised as a professional, and we are as good as all the other groups. What we do is as good as the other groups. So let's raise the bar and, bring in the things that need to be done to bring it to that level. And I'm not diluting the work. I think, everybody, I caught up with Romney a couple of weeks ago. We had lunch and we talk about stuff, and, Graham's got his speciality. I've got my speciality. John's got his. Alison's got his. Everyone's got their own little speciality, and that's great. We're all adding to it. But the other thing is, down the track, is that I'd like to see that a lot of the work, one day, we all need to come under the one umbrella. And when we do that, yes, we have a core training program, which most of us have taken, and then there'll be other courses you can do depending on your interests. But I want to make sure that what's being taught actually works, because people can put together a course and go out and teach it, but they don't know if it works.
Yeah.
So that's important. But that's a philosophical discussion for a group of Bowen people sometime in the future.
But they are important. They're really important discussions as well. And I think this is one of the things that I've been aware of since I've joined the BTPA is this need for coherence and cohesion between all of these different parts, so that we can bring forward this amazing practice and allow it to do what it does best. But I am gonna check in on one thing here, because obviously you're going to be in the UK, in Hereford, 20th to the 23rd of June, teaching PASC 1, 4, 5, and 6, and so depending on what people have already done, will allow that access. But you just put in that question there about what the bottom stoppers do. Now, are you going to answer the question, or do people need to come along to the training in June to find that out?
When I was with Romney, I'm going to answer your question with a short story. I was with Romney for 18 months in his clinic, and he'd do this little move at the end of a lot of the treatments. And I said to him one day, we were in his little office, and I said to him, you know, when you do at the end of the treatment, you do this little thing at the end, what are you doing? Because I was standing 3 meters from the table and I couldn't see what his other hand on the other side was doing. I was always on, if the patient was supine, I was always on the left side of the table. So if his right hand made a move, I couldn't see it. And he smiled and he said to me, you'll figure it out. That was in 2002. Anyway, 2008, I was at a conference in Winchester, and I was sitting there, and the presentation wasn't all that interesting. My mind was wandering, and all of a sudden, boom, I had the answer, and I started using it. I was trying this thing in my practice, but not really sure if I was getting the same sensation, result, whatever. And so about 2008, we had lunch. Sorry, that was 2000. That was 2008. It was probably when I came back to Australia. I caught up with Romney. We're sitting in this cafe having lunch, and I said to him, I figured it out. This is 6 years later. I'm a slow learner. And I explained to him the whole mechanics and understanding of what it was he was doing and why he was doing it. And he smiled. He said, oh, it's good. And went back and ate his lunch. And here was this great revelation. And so I'm going to not give you an answer directly, because I think I said to Romney one day, he said to me, I'm not a teacher. And I said, Romney, you taught me some great stuff. And he said, what do you mean? I said, because you sort of gave me a little bit of information and then said, go away and figure it out for yourself. Now, I will never forget that information. In fact, I teach it in the PASC course, in this technique. It's not taught in any other Bowen school. And I had the opportunity, I was in Oxford with a very prestigious chiropractor who was very well known, and I was asked to give him a treatment. And he'd never had Bowen before. And he was I'm a big time chiropractor, you know. Boom, boom, boom. He got on the table, he had a lower back problem. He was lying supine. I did one move on him, but not on his lower back. And he got off the table pain-free. And he said to me, what did you do? I said, I just did Bowen on you. And he just could not believe it. And so, you know, I learned that, and I said to Romney, you taught me more than you realise, because you made me think about it, and I had to go and think about it. And apparently Tom was like that too. He would often give them misleading information. If they asked a question that was obviously not right, he'd say, yeah, right, that's, yeah, whatever. And then they go away about 3 weeks later and they come back and go, look, I've checked it out, Tom. It doesn't seem right. And he goes, yeah, I was wondering when you'd figure it out, you know. So there's my answer.
Okay, sure. So for the best result, for everybody that's listening, come along and spend time with Ron, June 20th to 23rd in Hereford here in the UK. And also we're lucky enough as well that we've got David Howells, who teaches your hormonal release the Bowen way. And he's actually got classes coming up in July and in October in Leamington. And people can find details of that on hormonereleasethebowenway.com under classes. And obviously what we'll do is we'll put in a link in the description of the video to the PASC seminars, which if you want to have a look ahead of that is just as it sounds, PASCseminars.com, where you can find more about Ron and his work. Ron, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Really, really appreciate it. And I know that what we've spoken about will be of real value to listen to the Bowen community and the wider bodywork community. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Any parting words before we finish there today?
No, I think that word I was looking for was cholesterol, actually. Before I don't know why my brain sort of went. I think probably I would say that, you know, anybody who's considering a career in Bowen, it's a wonderful technique, great group of people, and you know, it's certainly my family, and Bowen is my tribe. Okay, And I've been very lucky to have met lots of people and worked with Tom. I spent 4 years with a lady who worked with Tom and, recorded all her stories and I just think follow your heart, follow your passion, because that's what I did. I gave up quite a successful career to walk into what could have been potentially a disaster, and it wasn't. And I've traveled the world. I've met amazing people. I've got friends right around the world, and I'm very, very grateful for that. And I appreciate that. If it wasn't for Tom Bowen, none of this would have happened. So thank you, Tom, wherever you are.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ron. What a beautiful way to finish. Thank you to everybody who's listened along today. We really appreciate your attention here. I've been Ben Calder for the BTPA, the Bowen Therapy Practitioner Association in the UK, and we've been chatting to Ron Phelan. Thank you, everybody. Take care.